there's a lot of technological progress at this moment in time. Are there any doors that shouldn't be opened? Are there any Pandora's boxes here? One of the thoughts I've had in my mind is nuclear potential, long tail risks, extremely low probability, but extremely high consequence. Probabilistically, if you roll time forward enough, eventually happen.
But the issue is who decides? I mean, that's the problem, is that one can theoretically say, yeah, there are some doors we shouldn't open, but which doors? And maybe some doors do need to be opened that look really risky now, but they actually aren't, and vice versa. There could be many things that we think are quite pedestrian, like, for example, looking at bats' relationship to certain viral techniques and investigating the laboratories. And now some people, I don't even know what the answer is, but some people, well, that's what caused COVID. I don't know if we'll ever know what the actual source of COVID was, but who knows? That could have come from relatively pedestrian scientific research that had a good cause. I think, again, it just goes to human hubris of what we do and don't know. We want to try so hard to stop bad things from happening. I don't know if you can. And in the effort of trying to do so, you're empowering people who may not even agree with you on what to do and what not to do. So that's a fundamental problem that we've had for all of human existence. I mean, I love history. I think people should just read so much more history. Just look at what the Catholic Church tried to do, because they truly believed that we were headed in directions as a civilization that was going to cause us all to go to hell. So they outlawed basic science. They put astronomers in jail. They had the Inquisition. They had awful things. They thought it was for a good cause. They were determining, well, there are some doors we shouldn't open. We shouldn't really think too hard about whether the earth goes around the sun. Was that right? Well, I guarantee you a lot of people thought it was right. So I don't know if one can ever decide. And if something bad does happen, we'll just have to do our very best to mitigate it, as we did with nuclear weapons. People thought that in the 1940s there'd be a nuclear war by now, but there hasn't. A little bit of luck there, I think, but we've also put some mechanisms in place politically and internationally that so far have held. I hope they continue to do so.
You seem quite concerned about, over a longer period of time, the possibility of a nuclear conflict being quite real.
Oh yeah, that's one thing I studied when I was at MIT was arms and defense control, and we did nuclear scenarios, and they're pretty nasty. They would be bad. I'm not saying it would destroy the earth and we would end human civilization. They would be really, really bad conflicts, though. And especially when we start talking about tactical nuclear weapons that actually have a battlefield utility, I could see that happening.
Can you explain the difference between tactical and...
Yeah, a tactical nuclear weapon is something that actually has a yield of, 0.1 to 100 kilotons. Hiroshima was about a 12 to 15 kiloton bomb. Those actually have battlefield utility, and they're not city or civilization destroyers. They actually, especially if you detonate them at altitude, there's not as much radiation. You can actually deploy them on the battlefield, and it would be far, far less radiation than we had at Chernobyl or Fukushima. And so my point is that in a completely antiseptic way, one could say that there is a utility for smaller nuclear weapons. But then you have, your 1 megaton city busters as well. Those are really bad, and those would absolutely devastate metropolitan areas and cause tens of millions of casualties. That's bad too. And then the big question we often faced in political science when I was in that realm was, well, how do you prevent the escalation from one to the other? And no one's ever done it. So would fire breaks work? Would de-escalation work? We just don't know. And you sure as hell don't want to find out while it's happening, because no one's ever really done it before. So my point being is that I think we have to be very careful on ever crossing the nuclear threshold and hopefully put consequences that are non-nuclear in place and make very real so that any nation, including my own, the United States, knows that ever crossing that threshold would come at consequences that are so severe, it's not worth even thinking about it.
What are those consequences as they exist today, to your knowledge, or what should they be? Or
well, I think that there's an implicit assumption that if any country used even a small nuclear weapon on a battlefield as a demonstration strike or something like that, that they would become an international pariah. If one thinks that the sanctions on Russia are bad now, if they demonstrated a nuclear weapon in Ukraine or the Black Sea or something like that, one could foresee that there'd be a virtual embargo of Russia, that you would see no travel in and out by anyone of the country.